What is this war on Iran and Lebanon and Palestine really about? How do we stop it? What is the real mission? Who are the three cults that are behind it, who we could call the Dark Triad or the Pyramid? What is their end game? Is it really the end time? And what is our strategy to defeat this Dark Triad and to protect humanity, our own sense of it, and the species? So the mission of the war is for the US and Israeli leaders to have dominance and control over the entire Middle East and its primary resources, oil, land, labor, and major trade routes. Driving this war of conquest is an alliance of three cults. Christian and Jewish Messianic Zionism, heavily represented in both the US and Israeli governments, believe that territorial conquest is going to accelerate the return of a Messiah. But then these two cults diverge as to who that Messiah is and who his chosen people are and what's going to happen next. Political Zionism is related, borrowing that ancient theology and boiling it down to its essence that one people's identity justifies the expulsion of another. The third cult is neoliberalism, the ideology of all of today's political and business elites who have abandoned the post-World War II consensus that markets should be governed in order to serve people and replaced that with its opposite ideology that people should be governed to serve markets. Neoliberalism redefines liberty as the freedom to accumulate power and wealth and makes that accumulation the measure of human worth and the holy grail for humankind. The chosen people in the neoliberal theology are the wealthy. Everybody else is either useful to the group or they're expendable. None of these cults are Abrahamic in origin, nor do they promote liberty in any meaningful sense. All cults work the same way. They take the vessel of a wisdom tradition and then fill it with its opposite. In reality, the Abrahamic traditions in all of their branches and social liberalism at its post-war height all share a single root: universal human values. The three cults share a totally different origin, a belief in predatory behavior, domination over cooperation. And that poison seed is always going to converge into something like disaster capitalism, the deliberate exploitation of crisis for private profits. And we can verify this in the correspondence of the social circles of the three cults. As Jeffrey Epstein put it in an email to Steve Bannon, finding things on their way to collapse is the optimal way to seize power and money. The three cults are perfect instruments for disaster capitalism because each cult generates perpetual crisis, a population that's convinced that suffering is divine punishment, or that markets are God, or that some people are chosen and others are expendable. Societies like that are already in decay, and every new crisis those societies produce is another opportunity for power, wealth, control to transfer upward. The result of having these ideologies in control of our government, our economic systems, is now, of course, we have a small group of billionaires who believe they're divinely ordained by the markets to control all of our tools of civilization and the most dangerous military arsenals in human history. And having arrived at the top of this giant pyramid, they've convinced themselves that they are divinely ordained to determine who belongs, who lives, and who dies. Under that level of delusion, atrocities are not a risk, they are a certainty. From a game theory perspective, this is guaranteed. The ruling class run their economy as a competition game. The pyramid system below them is locked in permanent competition, all to serve the top. The military and political strategy they employ is identical. Make conflict and competition permanent. Make stopping impossible. Commit acts so irreversible, no one, not your enemies, not your own people, can stop. It's an escalation trap. And for the apocalyptic cults embedded inside these power structures, the ones who believe that Armageddon is prophecy, this becomes a calling. There are many theorists, including Beijing Professor Zhang, who are arguing that What we are witnessing in Gaza and Palestine, Lebanon, Iran is now worse than genocide. The term that he uses and many others are now using is human sacrifice. Mass murder, especially of children, to terrorize and demoralize your enemies, atrocity, propaganda, humiliation, torture, cruelty, which becomes the point. This behavior generates such animosity that your own people face existential danger and are forced to either cooperate with the project or defect. Those who cooperate become psychologically trapped. To defect means facing what they endorsed. This is so difficult. Many don't defect, they double down. And in doing so, they sacrifice their own humanity, entrenching camps against one another permanently. That these three cults have reached a level of human sacrifice is undeniable. On the first day of the U.S.-Israeli government bombing campaign of Iran, the U.S. struck a girls' school in a southern Iranian city, killing at least 175 people, teachers, administrators, mostly children. The U.S. military double-tapped to kill any survivors and rescuers, and the mayhem has not stopped. There are over 1,300, probably more, Iranians that have been killed and counting. Historical sites, hospitals, police stations. After receiving a series of classified briefings, one U.S. senator from Connecticut and other lawmakers confirmed that regime change, protecting human rights, women's rights, nuclear disarmament, none of this, none of the excuses that they've given have anything to do with the actual purpose of the attack. The entire objective appears to simply be to reduce Iran's capability to defend itself against Israel and give the United States an opportunity to seize resources. And as the United States media has been glued to this Iran war, Israel has been destroying Lebanon, a country the size of Phoenix, Arizona, killing hundreds and hundreds of people, at least 100 of them children, women, medics, have all been killed by Israeli forces in just a 2-week period. Around 1 million people have been forced to flee their homes just in Lebanon. Israel is claiming that their target is Hezbollah, an armed Lebanese resistance organization whose core demands are Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon and occupied Palestine. Meanwhile, Palestine continues to be bombed. Settlers continue to attack Palestinians, seizing their homes, their territory. Israelis continue to expand both the apartheid conditions and their own borders. Over 80% of Gaza's infrastructure is now in ruins as millions of residents endure precarious living conditions and limited aid. At least 20,000 children have been killed by Israeli forces just in the last 3 years. According to Save the Children, one child was killed every hour for 23 months and sometimes more. UNICEF reports that every child in Gaza who has survived now requires serious psychological support. There is no difference between the war and the so-called ceasefire, between the first and second phase of the deal. Strikes continue every day. There is no ceasefire. The U.S.-Israeli government assaults on the Middle East, with the support of most European leaders, have reached such unprecedented proportions that most human beings do not have the capacity to fathom the scale of human sacrifice. It is also difficult for most human beings to fathom the extent to which the U.S. government is now caught in an escalation trap. It cannot find an off-ramp. Backing down risks Iran destabilizing the Gulf investments that underwrite the American economy, but continuing the war and escalating it looks like it leads to the exact same cliff's edge. Either Israel drew the United States into this trap to collapse the U.S. empire and the European empire, and/or Trump and his inner circle simply don't care. Either way, Stephen Miller, Peter Thiel, the people actually running the show now, accumulate wealth and power in any and every scenario. War is not a problem to be solved. War is the business model itself. And for the ruling classes, they do not represent nation states. For them, nation states are just tools for their wealth capture. Whether the 0.001% have their central command center on a golf course in Florida, or inside of a bunker in Greenland, or at a new Pentagon facility in Tel Aviv, they don't care. The whole of the earth just exists for their extraction enterprise. The rest of the pyramid below the ruling class are following their game plan. All of the Fortune 1000 CEOs operate internationally. Most of Congress is beholden to those companies, and corporate media pundits spend their lives calculating which position best protects their place in the scheme. Meanwhile, the actual people of the West are in shock. Large majorities of the United States, the UK, Germany, France, Canada, Australia, Italy, so forth, all against the genocide of Palestine, against this reckless criminal bombing of Iran, against the total destruction of Lebanon. Most people are furious at their representatives who seem to do nothing but tweet news summaries, who worry, pearl clutching, that failing to supply more money and arms to this madness might be misread as not supporting the troops. In other words, corporate-backed politicians do not represent the bottom of the pyramid. They represent its geometric order. And the reason why these corporate politicians get away with this is because the pyramid itself owns the most powerful communications technologies in recorded history. So the majorities of us are just constantly engulfed in programming that centers the price of oil, gasoline, consumer products, as if that's more important than the mass murders, as if human sacrifice is just normal and not the top story. The result is, of course, huge numbers of people are frozen, staring at screens, feeling deep in our bones something has gone terribly wrong, waiting for someone to do something, and feeling overwhelmed by nihilism, alienation, blind rage. All of this is central to their strategy. We are part of the human sacrifice. And the pyramid pretends that this is the normal world. Now, the word normal actually comes from geometry. It means conforming to the geometry of a system. In a cult system, human sacrifice might be normal, but for a human system, one that actually retains the qualities of humanitas, empathy, dignity, ethics, personal growth, working for the common good. In a human system, human sacrifice is psychopathic. Now, most of humanity is not psychopathic. However, most of us are living inside a psychopathic system. In terms of sheer numbers, power, capacity, we should be able to dismantle this system and replace it. Our problem is coordination. And from a game and systems theory perspective, this is our only problem. What we're up against is that the three cults share one of the most powerful coordination mechanisms ever identified: the persecution complex. Persecution, whether it's real, partial, entirely fabricated, as a coordination strategy, it doesn't actually matter. Nothing binds a group faster or longer than the perception of a shared enemy, the perception of persecution. It doesn't just instantly create conflict, it creates permanent separation. Camps that are so sealed that crossing the line to the other side feels like self-annihilation. Persecution requires no positive vision, no program, no plan for how to build anything, just an enemy. The group is under threat, and that threat becomes the absolute justification for the strongman, the party, the leader, the war, the human sacrifice, the blind march right off a cliff or straight into an escalation trap. Christian Zionism, Jewish Messianic Zionism are built exactly on that mold, along with political Zionism, as is any separatist ideology. Neoliberalism also has a persecution complex, a very deep one. Its constant message is that the individual, everything that you have, you earned alone in a winner-take-all competition game that's as natural as the rising of the sun. If you had solidarity with the rest of humankind, you would risk persecution, banishment from the group. You could potentially be turned into a victim. In the mythology of neoliberalism, every individual is responsible only for themselves. And how do you take responsibility for yourself? Well, you got to climb as high as you can inside the pyramid to protect yourself and your family. If there is human sacrifice involved, well, that's just a practical reality of the world in which we live. Of course, in reality, the world of the pyramid is a mechanism built for collapse. Neoliberalism is actually the keystone. Being a reasonable person, especially one insulated enough from the mass violence occurring out there at the edges, it might be easy to imagine that the way to bring order back to our world is a return to mythological origins. So this is the part where we pretend that the steps that we took recently didn't lead us to where we are right now. Retracing those steps won't take us somewhere new. It will just cost us more precious time. And time is the one thing we do not have. This is the lore, the branding of neoliberalism, that a perfect balance of the three cults is not only achievable, but optimal. It's a call for finding common ground at the reasonable center between extremes, in the middle of the pyramid. I mean, wouldn't that be where it's the safest and most secure and stable? A place where there's the least risk to your position? This is the strategy that we have been sold for decades. Well, who sold us that strategy? The pyramid. Neoliberalism is the keystone that we must remove to bring the whole pyramid down. Now, the good news is that neoliberalism is not the only voice that is speaking. There are many in the global South offering a far more accurate worldview and who have been for quite some time. At the United Nations, country after country from Africa, Latin America, Asia have voted consistently against the occupation of Palestine, against the invasion of Lebanon, the bombing of Iran, and cracks are forming in Europe. Spain has recalled its ambassador from Israel, refused U.S. forces' use of its military bases. Austria, Belgium, Ireland, Slovenia, Spain, many others have committed to arresting Netanyahu if given the opportunity. What we have been witnessing, the level of human sacrifice, the behavior of the U.S. empire since Trump's reelection, applying the same levels of cruelty abroad now in every major city across our entire caste system, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender. All of these events have exposed the pyramid for what it is and have revealed the winning strategy. The pyramid and its three cults are an existential threat to all of humankind, even themselves. All of humankind is being persecuted by this pyramid. And this is the single most powerful force of opportunity for coordination across the world in service to universal human values. But don't we need a leader, many ask? Don't we need a story? Well, we already have the story. It's the oldest one. It's the same story that's been told in every language, in every century, on every continent. The golden rule: love thy neighbor as thyself. It's the highest commandment of every wisdom tradition since the birth of humankind. It's what makes us human in the first place. It's what gives us the qualities of humanitas: empathy, dignity, ethical behavior, personal growth, working for the common good. The highest good. Every civilization has a word for that. The content is always the same. This is what is actually normal for the geometry of a human being. Your love for the people in your life, your need to belong, to contribute, to grow, to matter, the anger you feel, the horror and grief, the instinct that something's gone deeply structurally wrong, all of this is normal. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. This abnormal pattern that we are all recognizing, this machine built to extract our labor, our time, our attention, our money, our sense of reality, and then selling us an image of that pattern back to us as entertainment. None of this is normal, and it's not how humanity has survived as long as it has. We have survived in spite of this pyramid, through our extraordinary ability to cooperate, and sometimes to a fault. That's the reason the pyramid keeps showing up, is because we are so predisposed to cooperate, we'll go along with almost anything to keep good order within our group, to protect ourselves from being persecuted. The problem is we've just been tricked into joining the wrong group. Every human being on earth, right now, shares ancestors, great-grandparents. We are one family tree that intersects again and again, over and over again. We're one bloodline, one tradition, one people whose children are all our children. The pyramid that separates us into sections, that is an abnormal, deliberate construction. We know it's wrong. We feel it in our bones. We don't need more evidence. We don't need any more debates. So beware of pyramid media. Journalism is only doing its job if it is strategizing how to replace the pyramid. If it's just arguing talking heads, from different corners of the pyramid selling ads shut that part off. The pyramid depends on you surrendering your humanity. Please don't cede another inch. Join community groups, boycotts, strikes, divestments, march for inspiration, but be sure to jam up this system. You know who you are, where you are, and what's in front of you, so you know what to do. If you're not sure where to start, that's what this website is for, and countless community organizations that are all around us, everywhere, talking about the same thing. So grab a hand and let's get to work. And then, well, that's going to be out of our control. Every wisdom tradition since the dawn of time has taught the same principle, that true liberation comes from surrender. Not surrender to another human being, but the letting go of our stories, our idols, the forms in our imagination in service to first principles. Let us surrender the universe to that which governs the universe. But let us also open our eyes to this world in front of us and do our part. The path that retains our humanity, that leads us to the true Holy Grail. And the only real holy war is the one within ourselves.